A somewhat beleaguered group of Republicans, Jeb Bush, Mitt Romney, who spent their weekend at a Virginia pizza parlor on what they called a listening tour to try to reinvigorate the Republican Party. Someone looking on possibly with a smile at all of this is GMA contributor and Democratic political strategist James Carville, who has a challenge for all the Republicans who think they can come back. It is a new book out called 40 More Years, How the Democrats Will Rule the Next Generation. 40 more years. Let me read what you write here. Republicans shouldn't be worried. They should be in agony. They should be throwing up. Republicans had better get a better policy on prescription drugs, and quickly they're going to need a lot more Prozac. Right. 40 years? What's your case for this?
Well, first of all, 40 years of dominance by a political party are the norm. From 1896 to 1932, there was only one Democratic president. From 32 to 68, only one Republican. And we've been living in an era of almost Republican dominance, 28 years to 12 years in the last 40. And young voters are moving Democratic at an alarmingly fast rate if you're a Republican. Every growing demographic is trending Democratic, and I think we're probably on the verge of another 40-year era of party dominance.
But, you know, there are people looking at this who say there's a big hole in this argument, and the big hole is the deficit that is building up, the debt that is building up. Even though the Obama administration was in crisis, it is constantly adding debt. In fact, in 10 years, per person in America, $2,700 will be spent just to pay the interest on the debt, not to pay down the debt, but just to pay the interest.
Look, I think that the deficit is going to be a big issue, but the Republicans have credibility. I mean, it used to be when I was younger, they had credibility on spending. They blew all spending credibility in the early part of this decade. And sure, they can do better if they are able to attain some of that credibility, but right now people are just not looking to them. And the way that they're talking about this is kind of
isn't it ripe for their taking back their issue?
It's their best issue. These teabaggers, they turned everybody off. There were a bunch of like 75-year-old cranky white guys mad at everything. It just couldn't have been a better event for the Democratic Party. I hope they come back and teabag some more. And I think that the Democrats are going to be smart enough to, when this recession is over, and it will be over, to jump back on top of this spending issue like President Clinton did back in the 90s.
Well, I want to talk about some of the other vulnerabilities out there. Again, it's been pointed out there's no guarantee Earl Inspector moves over to the Democratic side, seems to give a good block now to block any vote against them, but strength is not always deployed effectively. Here's Jon Stewart.
I guess that means now the Democrats will control the House, the executive, and without Franken, they'll have a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. They haven't had that much power since the beginning of Jimmy Carter's presidency. And man, that went great. That was a juggernaut of progress.
Too confident, overconfident, Mr.
Well,
Carville?
you know, David, I started this project long before the 2008 election. In fact, I was on here and we looked as early as May of 2008, or maybe even April. We identified me as the author of 40 More Years. Yes, I mean, is there a chance that some of this is sort of Democratic hubris? Of course. But the underlying dynamics that are shaping the American electorate are sort of in place. And unless there's something to do to change them, this is going to be a pretty tough time for the Republican Party. All
right, let's talk about what could change them. And on the Democratic side, then the Republican side, you have listed a kind of trifecta, your own trifecta, of the three dangers that the Democrats face, how they could lose it all. And hubris is the first one?
Of course, it always is. And I said early on one of that the big problem was going to be we were going to start getting into trouble, and our people were going to start getting indicted. It follows power around. It always has. And
not controlling the spending issue. But what can you do in this economy?
Well, there's probably not much you can do in this economy, and there's probably not much you want to do in this economy to control the spending issue. But again, presumably we'll come out of this, and they're going to have to have some credibility and get a hold to it.
And ideological purity tests of which particular kind?
Well, what the Republicans have, look, my friend Mark Shields once said, do you want to be in a church that's chasing out heretics, or you want to be in a church that's trying to bring in converts? The Republicans are always, he's not a real Republican, or, you know, Rush Limbaugh says that good riddance to Specter and McCain and his daughter ought to go. That's not the kind of church we want to have. When a party gets political power, it tends to become arrogant and start chasing people out that it doesn't agree with. I hope that we don't do that.
Okay, the Republican comeback advantages are, we talked about getting credibility on spending, so that was your first one out there. But the second one was to recruit fresh candidates.
Right.
Specifically, what do you think they can target and how fast?
Well, I think they can target people pretty. I think they can target people pretty quickly, and they got to get the faces of the party off. They're trying to get this Eric Cantor, this young guy from Virginia, and they talk a lot about Paul Ryan, who's a congressman from Wisconsin. Eric Cantor and Paul Ryan, but they need to start recruiting people at the city council level, at the county level
quick
too.
Last one, learn to use a scalpel. Got about 15 seconds.
They don't have any calling people socialists and fascists and all of that. It just turns people off to no end. It's just one giant machete they have. Put it down, get a scalpel, you'll do better.
Take your vitamins, because you got to live 40 years and see if James Carville was right. That's the book, 40 More Years.